In today's CXO Byte episode, we are going to talk about Objectives Key Results or OKR strategy, a popular leadership process for setting, communicating, and monitoring quarterly goals and results in organizations. The sudden shift to remote work in the wake of the pandemic last year has created both opportunities and challenges for companies. This year, many are reimagining policies, strategies, and models to fit a hybrid future. In this context, the Objectives Key Results or OKR framework has a lot to offer. Market leaders like Google, Twitter, Apple, Spotify, Dropbox, and LinkedIn deploy the OKR strategy to improve their financial performance and also motivate workforce. Without further ado, we'll know straight from the expert. We have with us today Senthil Rajagopalan, who's the president and COO at Profit.co, a specialized firm in the Silicon Valley, which is into OKR tech consulting, project management, and other innovative business solutions. Senthil is a lead OKR coach and technology expert with over 2.5 decades of experience across functions, sales, process consulting, technology, customer management, and practice management. He operates both from Bangalore, India, and also North America. So over to you, Senthil, and a warm welcome from CXOToday.
Thank you, Sohini, and thank you, CXOToday, for having us here. Really appreciate the opportunity and quite excited to talk to you and your audience about OKRs and what Profit.co and we have been doing in this space. Yeah.
So can you tell us a little about OKRs and why it is relevant in the modern workplace?
Sure. So there are hundreds of management theories out there, right? And I'm going to probably quote what Steve Jobs said, right? When people asked him, what is really so significant about Apple, right? That everybody wants to buy an Apple product, and Steve Jobs simply said that they work, right? So similarly, while hundreds of management theories and goal frameworks are out there, right? OKRs is the dominant goal management and execution platform for some of the most innovative and dominating companies of today, right? Used by the companies today. So OKR actually expands as objectives and key results, and it is a very simple, lightweight, goal management and execution, framework actually. And the reason why this is short to significance is that while it was originally invented in Silicon Valley, right, and by Intel, way back in the 1970s, but OKRs really became hugely popular after Google started using it, right, from late 99. Yes. And today, entire Silicon Valley, as well as the technology product companies, have started using it. And now, since Profit.co is selling, the OKR software and solutions globally, we are finding, the adoption of OKRs actually spreading, beyond Silicon Valley, across the globe, and also beyond the technology vertical and beyond startups, right, pretty much to every vertical, right, including even, it's maybe surprising, even the governments, right? Some very progressive governments have also started using it. So OKRs, is a very simple framework, right? The O in OKR stands for objectives, right? Where you define, the top 3 to 5 goals, right? Your company or your department, right? Or a team, right? Any possible level, right? What are the top 3 to 5 things that you would like to achieve, right? And this is a qualitative statement, a directional statement of that, right? So for example, we want to improve our customer success, right? Or we want to, improve revenue, right? Or we want to become the most preferred employer, right? For, our employees. So you list the top 3 to 5 goals, right? As objectives, and then you support those objectives, right? For each objective, you choose, 3 to 5 key results. So the key results are really the metrics which you are actually going to be using to measure whether you have attained that objective, right? So typically the objectives and key results are chosen on a quarterly basis, right? And this is something which is done in a very intuitive and very easy to use for everybody. And OKRs by itself, since it originated in Silicon Valley, it brings in a very egalitarian culture, right? Where there is 100% visibility about the goals, right, of the company as well as every other team, right, to all the teams, right? So to that extent, a very enabling culture, right, is absolutely required to make OKR successful. And the culture, requires transparency, ability to think big, right? Stretch, go for stretch goals, stay focused by choosing only 3 to 5 OKRs, right, at every level, and really working collaboratively as a team, achieving those OKRs, right? So that is really the fundamentals of OKRs, right? So you keep a lightweight, easy to use goal management and execution platform, right? Which is easy to understand for even for the lowest level of department or team members, and it's very powerful. The simplicity makes it very powerful.
So that's a great explanation, Senthil. If you can just, if I can just point out, like frameworks like balance scorecard. So how OKR is different from these other strategies?
Sure. So I think
in HR.
Yeah, probably the biggest differences I would say, compared with balance scorecard and other frameworks, is that one, OKRs are not just a goal management system, but they're also a complete execution framework, right? So what we mean by that is, you really have complete clarity, right, in terms of how you will execute the goals, right? So there is a methodology for that. There's a framework for that, right? So where, for example, Profit.co, we propose that companies follow a very simple process called plan, execute, engage, and learn, right? We call this as the PEAL methodology, where you plan for the goals in the first week, by the first week of the quarter, and the remaining 12 weeks, you do execute, engage, and learn, right? So every week, right, it's not enough you just plan, but every week, every key result needs to be checked in, right? Which means you need to, record the progress made in that particular week. And people who are checking in need to list their confidence level, right, for achieving that key result by the end of the quarter. And they also need to give a commentary, right? So, which means, week on week, right, that is, you are going to be really seeing the execution of the OKRs unfold across the company, right? And there may be dependencies across different departments for executing these OKRs, right? All of them are going to come in. So people are going to be able to see problems early, right? So the execution starts happening, and actually you are able to see, that week by week, right? You are going to be seeing how that actually executes. And also OKRs by themselves, particularly when you use a good software to execute, really can help you to build employee engagement and build a high performance team, right? Because, as people report their check-ins, right, the others can actually comment on the check-ins, right? They can encourage them, like, as if you would be doing in a social media, you like them, right? You ask them questions on, as if you would use the hashtags and add notifications like in Twitter, you ask them. So there is a lot of employee engagement that can happen. And then finally, by the end of the quarter, right, you do what we call as the reflect and reset exercise, right? Where you actually reflect on the progress made by the end of the quarter, right? And then you really look at what worked, what did not work, and then you plan for the next quarter, right? So, as you can see, this is a complete execution system. It's not just a goal management system. And that is really the primary differentiator between, OKRs and other frameworks like balance scorecard. And also, I think the point which I mentioned before, right, today's leading technology companies, as well as, right, the most innovative disruptors, right, all of them use OKRs. And in the tech world, your employees, everybody is quite familiar, right, with how OKRs work, at least in the tech industry, right? Whereas in the case of balance scorecard, typically you would find that only the top management level, right, there may be awareness about how that works. And operationalizing, a balance scorecard, right, is a challenge, right? So you need an execution framework like OKRs to do that, right? So that is, I would say, is the, those are some of the differences. And ultimately, OKRs seem to be a framework which is actually currently working for everyone.
So that's excellent. For remote teams, how are OKRs suitable? If you can just give some examples.
Absolutely. So I think, to answer this question, let us go back and look at, how employees were managed, right? When the whole, factory system evolved, right? So when organized work started happening and the factory system started happening, right? People were really judged based on how much time they were putting at work, right? So you had things like people had to use time cards, they had to check in, right, and say that, okay, I checked in at 9 a.m. today, and then I'm checking out at 5 p.m. today. So the HR would measure, really how many hours people are putting, right? So you started off by measuring whether people are just checking in and just available at work, right? So that's how it started, right? And then second, people were also judged based on the activity or output, right? So for example, if it's a salesperson, right, I'm making 100 calls today, right, or I'm writing 80 emails today, right? So those are all checking the activity, right? What is the productivity, right? What is the output? So but if you really look at OKRs, the stark difference, right, between OKRs and other ways of measurement is that in OKRs, the measurement is really based on what sort of outcomes you are delivering, right? So if you are a producer, if you're producing something, right, then what have you really produced? What is the impact it is making in the marketplace? And if you're a salesperson, it is not on the number of calls you make, but really it's on the number of deals you have closed or the number of opportunities you have created, number of appointments you have created, and so on and so forth, right? So that's one of the big differences, right? So when people work in remote, right, and if you have an outcome-based measurement system, which doesn't require monitoring, right, how many hours somebody has put in, or a manager having to, really watch over the shoulder of, all the employees, right? Instead, you have a very empowered culture, right, where the goals are defined at higher level and the goals have been cascaded down to the lower levels. Every employee and every department manager, they understand exactly what are their goals and how their goals are actually contributing to the corporate goals, and they are going to be judged based on the outcomes, right? And they will have to record these outcomes on a weekly basis. And if they have any difficulty, they can have one-on-one meetings with their managers, they can have team meetings and all of that. But essentially, you are going to be judging people based on outcomes and not based on the amount of time that they have put in or amount of output that they are generating. So this is a very fundamental philosophical difference, right? Which which was very native to OKRs, and this particular thing lends very well, right, to remote working, right? So when you are doing remote working, the manager is not sitting next to the employee, right? Instead, you empower the employee, right, to make sure that they understand the goals and they responsibly work and deliver on the outcomes, right? So that it works very beautifully from that perspective. And the fact that you're going to have weekly check-ins, weekly reviews, right, and one-on-one reviews, right, and all of that really adds to the whole process, right, of getting work done effectively, right? So that's how we believe OKRs contribute to remote working. And companies which use OKRs, actually, there are several of our customers who have gone on the record to say that because of OKRs, they actually were able to execute much better during COVID, even though they were widely distributed, right? I can give a couple of examples, right? One, All India Football Federation in New Delhi, India, right? So they adopted OKRs just before, the COVID struck, right? And after COVID happened, AAFF was the first sports federation which was able to bounce back, right, and organize, their training events and team events, right? Because even though they could not meet together and work, because they were able to work remotely very successfully because of OKRs. And they've also gone on record saying that they wanted to start a digital TV channel, which they were planning to do 3 years later, which they actually got it done within 6 months, right? And they achieved viewership of several millions, right, through that. So there are several successful case studies of people who have really benefited in, because of using OKRs in the remote way of working, actually.
And it is not limited to companies or industries or sectors. I mean, I think companies, all kind of industries and companies and sectors can use OKR as their key strategy, right?
Absolutely. And if you really look at it, we said that it started off with technology companies, right? So, but from there, we are seeing the adoption moving on to different types of companies, different types of industries, right? So that's why I mentioned, that we have financial services companies, we have insurance companies, we have, energy companies, right? We have energy companies who are doing well, traditional, and different types of companies. We have media companies, right? Media and entertainment, semiconductor companies, and even governments, right? There are a few government entities in North America and Middle East and other geographies who are actually actively using. So, and I just mentioned the example of All India Football Federation, right? So there's really no limit to who can actually work, and people are quite inspired by what they see with the leading technology companies, and people would love to emulate that. Yeah.
So it's very interesting to understand how OKRs are suitable for remote teams and how they can improve employee engagement. So I just want to ask you in this context, with employees already stressed in the pandemic situations, how can HRs make performance reviews less stressful? OKR is of course one way. If you can just explain, some other ways HRs can make performance reviews less stressful at this point of time.
Absolutely. I think that's a very important point, right? As you rightly said, performance reviews can be stressful for everybody involved, right? For HR, for the individual employees, for their managers, right? Because if you really look at the goal of a performance management exercise, right, for the company, and from the company's perspective, right, you really want to use performance management to identify the top performers and encourage others, right? Everybody, right, to perform to their potential and be aligned with the company's goals, right? And make sure that people are taking the feedback in a positive way and have fixed their learning goals for the next period, right? So that's really the objective from the goals from the company's perspective. Now, from an employee perspective, right, employees want to make sure that they get a fair feedback, right? Employees are very concerned that whatever they have done throughout the year, right, there is a fair reflection of that in performance. So, and irrespective of what we would like to believe, right, there are different types of biases which can come into the performance process, and definitely everyone, both employees as well as HR and executives, want to make sure that there's a sense of fairness for everyone, and as far as possible, try to bring down the biases, right? So just to give an example, there can be a bias called a recency bias, right, wherein you say that there have been 12 months of work, and the last month, right, whatever has happened or has not happened, that sort of is there in the memory of people, and people actually think about that, and while doing the performance review. But instead, if you have a process, something like OKRs really built into the fabric of the company, then week after week, you are actually doing check-ins. Week after week, you are doing reviews, right? And that is recorded in the tool. And when end of the year or end of the quarter, whenever you do the performance review, right? If you can have the department level OKRs and whatever OKRs that an individual has contributed to, and you see that week after week how things have performed, right? How the individual has contributed, right? When all of them are available and visible. So then that really makes the process easier for everyone, right? So the employee believes that, what the work that I've done throughout the year, right, that is available. So the managers who are doing performance review, they believe that, okay, now I have complete information to do the performance appraisal, and I've seen how the person has evolved, and the managers also had an opportunity to provide continuous feedback, right? So this actually improves, the satisfaction level for, employees. In fact, one of our customers mentioned that their eNPS score, employee NPS score, went up by 7 points, right, after they started implementing OKRs and after they started doing continuous performance management, right? So they have gone on record to say that. So those are some of the ways in which we believe HR can actually reduce the stress of employees, because ultimately employees are looking for fairness, right? And employees want to be heard well, right, about what they have to say, and if you can do this performance appraisal in a way that employees' concerns are heard, as well as, if you employ systems like 360 degrees or, peer reviews to come in, right? All of those can be great ways to reduce the stress level, not just for employees, but for everyone. Yeah.
Senthil, that was very insightful. But can you highlight some of the key ways to create a high performance team using OKRs? How can companies do this?
Sure, absolutely. So I think creating a high performance team is something which is a goal not for the HR team, right, but for the CEO and for the executive team,
Yeah.
right? Considering that many companies now are in the services business and their people really make the difference about how they execute, right?
Yeah.
So how OKRs contribute, to creating a high performance team, right? We are actually seeing this with several of our customers, right, where OKRs enable, you need great culture, for executing OKRs, and OKRs by themselves will contribute to that culture, right? How? Right? If you really look at it in every step of the OKR process, right? So if you take initially the planning phase, right? So the planning phase, that there are records which indicate that, in many companies, more than 75% of the people, right, employees, if you ask them, what are the top 3 things that the company needs to achieve? What are the strategy goals of the company? People may not be aware, right? And it is on record, right? HPR and several magazines have documented that. But when you implement OKRs, right, and implement it in the true spirit, so you define the company level OKRs, you define the department level OKRs, which means all the goals, and then make it transparent and visible for everyone, right? So that's the first part, right? So OKRs bring in the visibility, and when people know, right, and that they are being exposed to what are the goals of the company and the goals of the different departments, they really appreciate that, right? They think that, okay, they are actually treated with dignity and importance, and they're shown what are the goals of the company. So that's number one. Number two, when you fix the goals for the individual departments, and if you even go up to the team level or individual level, people really look at the goals of the entities which are above them, right? Which is the team and company level goals, and they define their goals so that they align with the company level OKRs, right? So they are able to see how their day-to-day work contributes to the company's goals. Okay, and with a nice software, you can actually see, right, as the employees move the needle of their OKRs, right, the company level OKRs also move, right? So they are able to see that their contribution is actually making an impact on the company's OKRs, right? So that's the second one, right? So in planning and in execution, you are seeing that the employees feel that they actually contribute to the company and they are able to see their contribution across the board. Apart from this, because of this transparency and visibility, right, we are also, OKRs as a philosophy is all about taking stretch goals and making very sincere attempts to achieve them, right? So and when companies implement OKRs, they look at all the departments and teams who have taken stretch goals, and they are appreciated, right, for going ahead and taking those stretch targets. And they may or may not achieve in entirety, right? We don't know. But as long as they make a very sincere effort and week after week, they report what is the progress that they are making on their stretch goals, then, management, as well as other departments and team members, they also, cheer them, right? They help them, right, to achieve the goals. So which means a very collaborative spirit is actually unfolding, right? People really help each other. And if a particular department or team is not performing, the other team can actually provide them the resources, right? So that way, during the execution, employee engagement absolutely improves, right? And there's also a motivation. Okay, so when you have a scoreboard which is visible and available for everyone, how your team is doing, how other teams are doing, right? There's a friendly competitiveness, right, which comes in, and everybody wants to perform well, right? So that way, slowly the team actually evolves into a high performance team, right? And then, you also have, people also share their learning, right? What they have learned, right, while executing stretch goals, right? And then the culture itself is something which really tolerates failure and encourages learning, right, with OKRs. So when you do all of that put together, then, the high performance team, absolutely starts happening. And we see this with companies, right? The first quarter is typically what we call as a learning quarter, where people get comfortable with the whole activity of OKRs, setting up stretch goals and going from there. But then by the second quarter, people are start getting very comfortable, and then they start absolutely evolving as a high performance team.
So that was a very enlightening reply, Senthil. Now I'll go a little off OKR, and I'm just curious to understand that you said you enjoy hiking and reading about innovative business models. I would want to understand if you were reading anything interesting or planning some trips ahead. If you can talk about that a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. So first, in terms of travel, I have not had the opportunity to do too much of travel recently because of the COVID-related situation. But when I was in the US, obviously I had a lot of chance to travel. I have traveled to 41 out of the 50 states in the US, and I've even traveled to places like Alaska and Hawaii, and done hiking in glaciers, and a lot of very good national parks. And India, of course, we are living in a very good place where I get a chance to go to the Western Ghats whenever I can. Of Western Ghats of Karnataka and the whole west of India, right? We absolutely enjoy the hikes, right?
That's how you unwind, is it?
Absolutely, yeah. Travel is a great way to spend time with the family and to unwind. So we absolutely enjoy doing that together as a family. And in terms of learning about business models. So definitely, I love reading about new business models, what some of the most successful companies are doing now. So I was actually, for example, in our previous company, it was really based on what you call as the platform business model, right? So in a platform model, right, a company needs to serve, two types of users, right? So I'll give one example, right? Let's say if you take Uber or Ola. Uber or Ola need to manage both their end customers, who are the passengers, as well as the drivers, right? So they need to take care of both of them and balance both of them. Same thing with, let's say, a Zomato or any of the other food delivery companies. They need to handle their delivery boys as well as the the end customers, right? So that's a very interesting business model which has started evolving, where you need to take care of multi sides and start working. So I do like to look at these sort of new business models and learn from other people, right, on those. And in terms of reading currently, I'm definitely reading some very interesting books on new sales models and how they actually impact the SaaS world, right, software as a service. So I'm reading how a new sales book. I mean, it's not exactly new; it's been there for some time. It's called Challenger Sale Method, and also I'm also reading a few books on how to improve employee engagement and how to improve the overall culture, right, in an organization. So definitely would love to share them with you.
Very important, yes.
Yeah.
So, yes, thank you very much, Senthil. So in today's CXO Bites, we have a lot of interesting conversations around OKR, its key benefits, how companies can create an effective OKR strategy, and a whole lot of conversation with Senthil around business models and travel and other things. Thank you for your time, Senthil. It was wonderful having you here. Sure. We will have many more such exciting conversations around enterprise technologies and strategies in our coming episodes. Stay tuned.
Sure. Thank you very much, Sohini, and thank you very much, CXOToday.